views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime. We thank you for joining us here on the Social Justice Forums. If anybody asks what the show is about, we talk about a lot of the inequities that people face. We deal with the issues of social justice. We meet community-based organizations, people who are making a difference, people with boots on the ground. We also promote civic engagement and multiple points of view. So stay with us. The Social Justice Forums starts right now. And welcome back to the show. Well, founded in 1875, the mission of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children is to respond to the complex needs of abused and neglected children and those involved in their care. That's by providing best practice counseling, legal, as well as educational services. Now, through research, communications, and training initiatives, NYSPCC is dedicated to providing these services free of charge to the most vulnerable children and families in New York City, as well as to the caring professionals who work in these populations. I'm joined now to share more about this by the Executive Director of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, Dr. Mary Pulido. And Dr. Pulido, good to have you.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And when we talk about dealing with children and cruelty to children, definitely our most vulnerable population, that and seniors. You've had your effort in terms of dealing with these issues. Talk to us a little bit about your organization.
Sure. Well, the first, just a tiny bit of history is that the NYSPCC is the first child protection agency in the world. And we were founded in 1875 right here in Hell's Kitchen because a little girl was being abused. Her name was Mary Ellen, and a church worker named Etta Wheeler didn't know what to do because there were no one to protect children. There were only laws to protect animals. So she went to the ASPCA and asked them to intervene. And they went in and rescued the little girl and then wrote the basic laws that started the child protection system in the United States today and founded the NYSPCC. So if you go from where we were ACS before there was ACS. We went in, we did investigations, we did removals. And then in the 1970s, the government took over that function, and we went on to do other services for children and families. And today we provide critical mental health services. We have a trauma recovery program that serves children who are recovering from physical abuse, sexual abuse, witnessing the homicide of a parent, horrific neglect. And we embrace these children, and we embrace the other members of the family to support them in the healing, the non-offending family members. And we work with them with all different types of therapy. It can be trauma-focused, cognitive behavioral therapy, play therapy, dance therapy, whatever that child needs in order to begin to heal and get over the symptoms that they're experiencing and the PTSD and depression or anger, so that they can go on to really start to thrive again and do well in school. We have collateral meetings with the schools, with the foster care agencies, with ACS, with the family members, so that these children really have the opportunity and the chance to heal and grow and thrive. And we don't charge for any of our services. And the children, we don't put a limit. It's not 12 sessions and you're done. If this child needs to be with us for a year, they're here with us for a year. And we're very fortunate to be able to provide that to the children of New York City.
Talk to me a little bit about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but talk to me a little bit about, as you deal, this is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so share with us a little bit about what exactly is child abuse?
All right, child abuse is any action that is taken with the intent to harm a child. In fact, if you look at child abuse and neglect, because they're often lumped together, but they're at opposite ends of the continuum. With child abuse, it means that an adult or a caretaker, a parent, is having an action to physically, mentally, sexually harm a child. They can be sexually abusing them, they can be hitting them, beating them, burning them, punching them, but it's an action and there's intent. When you look at neglect, which is the other end of the spectrum, it means the parent or caretaker is not taking action to keep a child safe. So you would see educational neglect, they're not going to school. Medical neglect, they're sick and they're not getting the care that they need or the food that they need. Emotional neglect where, babies are left in cribs by themselves and no one is taking attention to them. So April is the month where we try to call attention to all the issues that are facing children and the dangers that they're up to, and also to offer support for the caretakers and the parents who need it, so that they as families can thrive and reach out. The majority of children in New York City are removed for neglect, and you are able to put systems in place so that they can be reunited, because children really, they need a family. And if we can put enough services in place afterwards, and preferably preventive services beforehand, then that's why hopefully the numbers of children in foster care will continue to decrease.
You talk about the word beforehand, but I want to have an opportunity for our viewers who may not be so familiar as to maybe some of the signs or the symptoms of child abuse. When we look at someone or we look at a situation, what are some of the warning signs for potential child abuse?
Sure. Well, if you're just looking at physical abuse, when you look at a child and the child has, if a child has bruises because they're roughhousing or playing, when they fall, they scrape their hands, they scrape their knees, they scrape their elbows. But if you're seeing a child with a bruise on the neck or the forehead or like the back of the arms, those are not places where children normally get hurt. So those types of injuries should make you think something's not right. Any injury on a baby, I think, or a toddler, they're running into things, but parents and caretakers should really be extra careful at watching them. So those should also be looked at really, I think really very quickly. If a child is depressed, if a child is always outgoing, you may all of a sudden start seeing changes in their behavior. And that can range from being very sad and clingy and crying to anger and aggression. But you would see a change if a child is being abused, or you would, hear crying. That's not a normal, I want my toy crying, but it's a tragic crying and upsetting crying. And that's why we also, ask people to take that step and get involved and reach out and find out what's going on, even if it's anxiety provoking, because that is one way of keeping children safe. And the majority of children in New York City that experience child fatality are under the age of 4. They're not in the public eye. They're not in school all the time. They're infants and toddlers. And we need everyone to keep eyes open on children that may be at risk, and then to call the hotline and make a report. Even if it's anxious, I encourage people do it. You can do it anonymously, and you can save a child's life. One of the saddest things is to hear on the news after a child fatality occurs is someone to say, I thought I heard this, I should have done something. And Child Abuse Prevention Month is sort of our call to action to say to everyone, please do something. Please take that step and get involved. You could save a child's life.
Yeah. And once a child is abused, there is a certain amount of emotional trauma, psychological trauma that one endures, not just for the child, but potentially for those connected too. I know that you do great work with a trauma recovery program. Share with us a little bit about the trauma recovery program and how that's instrumental in the road towards healing.
Absolutely. We get many of our referrals come from ACS or foster care system. And they're for children that have experienced, the physical abuse, sexual abuse, or even community violence, severe neglect. And our clinicians are very specially trained to work with children to help one stabilize them, and so that they're able to have conversations and start the healing process. And we see children, usually from the ages of 5, if they're very verbal, possibly 4, all the way up to the age of 21. And the goal is really to help them understand that the trauma was not their fault, give them coping mechanisms when they start to get triggered, help them come up with different skills to manage their anxiety, their depression, their PTSD. And at the same time, working with a supportive family member. We don't want to see children in isolation, because we want someone with them after they leave us, so that they understand how to support the child when the child gets triggered, when the child's acting out, when the child's very sad. And through our work, we're able to keep these children and work with the schools and their other entities in their life, all the collateral systems, so that they are really supported until they heal. And we keep children in our program for as long as they need to be kept. We don't have a limit. And we've had really amazing results, and children do heal. They do heal, and they can go on to lead wonderful, productive lives.
Yeah. Sometimes when you think about the healing process, it can be lengthy, but the beauty is having an organization such as yourself, being able to be with them long-term throughout the process. And so you say that you stay with these children as well as their caretakers as necessary, as long as needed.
Correct.
Great. And I also want to take the opportunity to share a little bit about another program that I know that you have, and that's the Safe Touches program. So for our viewers, make us more acquainted with the Safe Touches program.
Oh, I'd love to, because that Safe Touches is on also the other end. But one of our programs is healing, and Safe Touches is all about prevention. We have a curriculum for children from kindergarten all the way up to the 12th grade, with the 4 or 5 different versions based on the age level. And the most popular one is the one for kindergarten through 3rd grade, and it's Safe Touches. It's a puppet show that teaches children the difference between what is a safe touch and what is a not safe touch, what parts of their body are private, who's allowed to touch them in private parts and when. If they receive a not safe touch, who do they tell? Who do they go to? And help them identify safe adults in their life that they can tell if they've had a not safe touch. And we were fortunate to get a grant from NIH to do a randomized controlled trial in the high need schools in the New York City public school system. And it's evidence-based, and it works. It's being replicated throughout New York, and Penn State is now taking it on to replicate it through Pennsylvania and the country of Greece. So we're really excited about it. But one thing I'd like to tell the viewers in the Bronx is that the Horace Mann School has funded us to provide the Safe Touches workshop from kindergarten through the 3rd grade to any public school that would like it. And to date, we've reached close to 30,000 children in the Bronx public school system from kindergarten through the 3rd grade. So if anyone here would like to have the Safe Touches come in, we're happy to do it. If you visit our website, we'd sign you up and come into your classroom.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. As we talk a little bit further about a lot of the programs that you have, I know that one of the things that we have to deal with child abuse sometimes is that parent. And that parent that can be the abuser. And I know court-mandated action will say, listen, you know what? As a part of this, you'll be separated from your child, whether removed from the home or visitation. Walk us through a little bit about some of the services and the support services that you have for parents who are trying to rekindle and restore that relationship through visitation.
Sure. We have one of the only therapeutic supervised visitation programs in New York City. And what we do is that the judge would order supervised visitation when there's been an issue between the parents and the child, or the parents' domestic violence has impacted the child. but it's usually parents who have substance abuse, mental illness, domestic violence, child abuse and neglect, or a combination thereof. And the judge has said you cannot see your child unless there's a therapist in the room guarding the interaction. So initially, many years ago, we just had therapists that just sat there and sort of just made sure the child was safe. But then over the years, we decided that we were missing an opportunity to really work with these parents to help them get the skills to repair and restore the relationship with the child, because children want to have a relationship with the parent at most of the time. They just don't want the abuse. They don't want the neglect. So we're working with the strengths-based perspective, we set goals with the parent so that they understand what's going to happen during the visit. We work with the child to make sure the child's safety is maintained at all costs. And these visits happen, it depends on the age of the child, once a week. If it's an infant or toddler, which we're also working with strong starts in Bronx Family Court on the babies and toddlers that have been separated, they may see their parents more often than once a week. And we guide the parent through appropriate parenting skills, how to interact with the child, how to respond to the child's needs. If the child's older, sometimes there's that very difficult conversations about, why, what happened, whatever the abuse was occurred. So that healing process can also start during the visits. And the goal is to eventually have the court satisfied that the parent is understanding their impact of the reason why they can't see their child and is making amends to correct those things, so that eventually they can move to what's called supervised transfers or unsupervised visits, in the community, maybe with a family member. But that's the goal, is to move the parents along a continuum. And then in tandem with that, we also have it's called the parenting journey, which is a parent education class for the parents that are ordered to have supervised visits. And it really helps them. Many of these parents have been traumatized themselves and have very extensive trauma histories. So what we're trying to do in the parenting journey is help them understand how their experiences and their traumas have impacted their parenting. And it gives them a safe place to talk about it with other parents, and a safe place to begin to say, all right, I don't want to repeat these mistakes again. Where do I go from here? And then the other component I'll just mention is that the custodial parent, we also have support for them, particularly in the areas of domestic violence, so that they then also can be accessing services and therapy and counseling and whatever else they need to repair and restore and move on from whatever abuse occurred. But we're one of the few programs in New York City that's doing this. We have a contract right now also with ACS to provide these services for parents, because we truly do believe in people's abilities to change and grow and repair and restore.
Yeah. One of the things I've become very familiar with are bereaved children. And knowing that there's a lot of parents out there who, have been involved, whether it's through, accidents or just natural causes, and that whole system of bereavement in the life of a child is huge. So a little bit about what you do in terms of helping children and families able to cope when you have the loss of a loved one, particularly a parent.
Sure. Well, those children probably would be referred to the trauma recovery program, so that they can better understand the grief and loss symptoms that they are experiencing, and also to offer different levels of support for a child that lost a parent and may not understand the grief that let's just say the mother is going through. The mother needs another type of counseling and support. So we're able to help the mother get the resources, or the father the resources that they need to deal with their grief, while helping them support the child's healing process. Because very often the adults are very enmeshed in their own grief, and they need their own support too. And children would tend to, they could internalize, they could externalize, but what we really want to do is make sure that everyone that's there gets the support they need. So our trauma recovery therapists would be working with them on all different aspects of grief and loss, and healing and moving on, and working with their school to make sure the schools understand what the child is also going through, and any other, collateral components.
Dr. Mary Pulido, we're going to leave it there because we got such an interesting time and conversation, uplifting information in terms of National Child Abuse Month, Awareness Month. Please give us some final thoughts before we go.
Sure. What I would just say is that I hope that everyone makes an attempt to learn about the signs and symptoms of child abuse, and to call, the 1-800-4A-CHILD is the national hotline number. If you feel that a child is in danger, please reach out, and please visit our website. It has a lot of resources, nyspcc.org, and we're happy to respond to anyone. They send us an email and get the resources to you. But just thank you for having me, and thank you for taking the time to learn more about our work.
No, we thank you so much, Dr. Mary Pulido. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums. We do have more show. We encourage you to stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
And welcome back to the show. Communities and special pharmacies continue to stay open during the COVID-19 pandemic to deliver essential counseling, information, and medicine supply to their local communities. A recent New York State policy would disrupt care for vulnerable New Yorkers on Medicaid and threaten the financial stability of safety net providers. Despite facing extreme financial loss, pharmacies continue to serve their community. Many people of color face challenges in having access to medical care in the United States. COVID-19 has greatly contributed to the problem of medical debt in the U.S., and communities of color are especially vulnerable to medical debt, just as they were vulnerable to the pandemic. Joining us now to provide a little bit more on this point of view and this matter, I'm joined by the Director of Operations at Mount Carmel Pharmacy, Javier Maldonado. And Javier, good to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. And when we talk about local pharmacies, obviously, your pharmacy is a specialty pharmacy. I'll give you an opportunity to share a little bit about what your, how your pharmacy operates, but share with us a little bit about pharmacies in this pandemic, because you also have been essential workers.
Sure. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you and have the platform to speak to these topics. During the pandemic, absolutely, pharmacies and their employees and staff are frontline workers and were considered essential workers. What's interesting about that conversation, that piece, for the longest time, pharmacists have not been considered healthcare providers, which has a much deeper impact to the practice, to the business, and to the profession of pharmacy. But during this pandemic, we have finally fallen under the umbrella of healthcare providers. And I think for the first time, the healthcare system, the politicians in Albany have all finally recognized the value and impact that community pharmacies make on the communities that they serve, and to the people that they're dispensing medication to. Pharmacists and the industry of pharmacy is absolutely essential employees, essential healthcare workers, healthcare providers, and are absolutely integral to the whole healthcare system.
When you talk about providing that service to the community, it's integral to the community. Talk to us about community and how they've basically been coming through your doors throughout the course of the pandemic in a much needed way.
Absolutely. So during the pandemic, there has been a lot of fear, a lot of misinformation about COVID, about the vaccine. And that pharmacy, that community independent pharmacy, again, being the beacon of hope in that community, is there to provide accurate and professional advice and information regarding COVID, regarding everything that's been going on with this pandemic. And for many people in our community, quite honestly, it's a source of information. It's you have so much misinformation in social media and on so many different internet outlets. For them to hear it from their pharmacist, from their licensed community professional, means a lot more, and there's a lot more trust in the community with their independent community pharmacists.
So as a community pharmacist, one would ask the question, how do you differ from that of the big names? So somebody says, I see the big name pharmacy and I got a community pharmacy. Talk to us a little bit about that difference.
I think the biggest difference, not only that where we can compete in, but I think where independent community pharmacies clearly excel beyond the chain, is the level of service. And when you think of service, it's a commodity. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, what space you're in, whether you're a grocery store, a supermarket, a gallon of milk is a gallon of milk. And how you provide that service or that product to that end user, that end customer, that end patient, is what makes that individual continue to come back. And I often go to the example of Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, right? Two companies that are selling coffee, but the experience you get in when you walk into those establishments is very different. When you walk into a Dunkin' Donuts versus walking into a Starbucks, from the name of the drinks, the name of the size of the drink, to the atmosphere, the music, the lighting, all of that ambiance creates an experience for that customer. And so I think the overall experience for the customers and patients when they walk into that community pharmacy is very different from what they would experience from a big box chain. I would equate it to college. When you're in a classroom or a lecture hall of 500 plus students, all you are is a social security number, versus being in a small class setting of 20 to 30 people, you have that one-to-one relationship with that professor. Similar philosophy, ideology, concept when you're thinking of pharmacy or community pharmacy. Individuals have that one-on-one access to that pharmacist. They know their pharmacist. That pharmacist in many cases has been in the community for generations. And so what that community pharmacy, independent pharmacy brings to that community is very different than what the big box stores will bring. And often when you think of those big box stores, it's not Walgreens pharmacy or CVS pharmacy. It's the big box name with a pharmacy within, right? So it's a pharmacy department within that store. Community pharmacy is all about the pharmacy and healthcare and providing that service to the patients. And service is where we excel. It's where we perform best. And it's where I think we stand out against our competition.
We talk about community pharmacies, and there definitely is a need for them, but they do come with challenges. I want you to share a little bit about some of the challenges you're facing presently right now, and even, navigating through COVID.
So when we think of the challenges of an independent pharmacy, the biggest challenge is around reimbursements. It's how we're compensated. It's how we're paid for the services we provide. For independent pharmacies, it's a challenge. There are many services that we provide to the public, again, because we're in this space to care for the public. We're in this space to care for people who have medical conditions. And at our core, it's not the business or the financial side of it. It's the healthcare, it's the patient outcomes, it's providing that patient the service and healthcare they need. And so when you think about the services that an independent pharmacy provides, from free delivery to free adherence packaging, to free patient medication counseling, to free medication synchronization, to blister packing medications, all of these services have a cost to them. And it's a cost that the independent pharmacy bears, unfortunately. And it's not a cost that's passed through to any insurance company or any patient. It's a cost that we absorb to provide what we feel is the best class service that we can provide to our patients.
And when we talk about patients receiving service, obviously communities are very much beneficial from the fact of having a community pharmacy, having those services there, being able to go not so far away, and having somebody that actually knows them. Talk to us about this as I get into this, because when we talk about vaccine, there's a lot of sometimes vaccine hesitancy, particularly in communities of color. How's it been for you in terms of people responding to the vaccine, given the fact that you've got a pharmacy and a place where, people can come and be vaccinated?
So you bring up a very interesting topic, especially in the world of healthcare, and you're touching on what would be categorized or fall under social determinants of health, right? And so when you're talking about social determinants of health, you're looking at economic stability, you're looking at neighborhood, physical environment, you're looking at education, access to food, you're looking at community and the social context, you're looking at the overall healthcare system. And pharmacy is really where rubber meets the road, right? It's where all of these pieces come together. And so what I mean by that is, take the vaccine hesitancy example you're giving. The pharmacy and the community independent pharmacy is a beacon where information can be provided to individuals to help with vaccine hesitancy and dispel any myths that may exist around vaccine. And that holds true for many of the other topics that are either misunderstood or not properly explained. And the education, the literacy behind a lot of the information in healthcare sometimes needs to be broken down a little better so that the individual can truly understand. And I think that's where the independent community pharmacy adds value to those components of social determinants of health, where we're able to educate our patients, we're able to give them accessible care to pharmacy and medication counseling. Being within the community adds value to the community that we serve, being that professional medical institution provider helps with the community as well. And so when you think of all those pieces, as well as the healthcare system and the role that the pharmacy plays in providing the medications that the doctors prescribe, all of those pieces come together in the world of pharmacy.
Yeah, but you've been doing a great job of really keeping the community healthy, especially in a time when you've lost income, money, reimbursements haven't been coming. How's it been for you navigating this whole thing?
It's been a challenge for the most part. We were hoping on changes coming through with the Medicaid fee-for-service, and with legislation allowing that to come to fruition. Unfortunately, that is not the case, or does not appear to be the case. And it leaves us in a position where reimbursements are unpredictable. It creates a revenue model that's unstable. It creates a revenue model that's difficult to manage a business and scale a business and move a business forward when you don't know what your reimbursements are going to be, or what you get paid today may be clawed back tomorrow. And so much of the reimbursement around pharmacy needs a brighter light shined on it, and more transparency into how these PBMs operate, how reimbursements are occurring at the pharmacy and insurer level.
When we have communities of color, we know that there are health disparities. As a pharmacy, as a director of operations, I would ask that, tell me about your experience and what you've seen with regards to the health disparities with communities of color and your perspective.
So for me, it might be a little challenging trying to answer that question because the majority of the public that we service are minorities and individuals of color. And from my perspective, the service that we provide to them is equal across the board. And as far as conversations that I have with the audience and public that we serve, and their experiences at other locations, at other pharmacies, at other healthcare providers, is not always the same. And the information that's provided to them or the time that an individual will take to explain the medications that that individual was receiving, that experience, again, going back to what that customer experience looks like, is not the same across the board. And to bring it back to the question you asked previously with regards to how we differ from chains, bringing this topic up is one of those places where I think we would stand out against chain pharmacies, where we truly are focusing on the community that we serve, and every interaction, every question, we focus in on that individual. We do our best to provide the best counseling and advice to that individual and treat everyone the same, regardless of color, race, nationality. I don't think you'll find that at a lot of other locations as far as the feedback we're getting from some of our clients.
Yeah. And, there is a sense of safety when you have a local community pharmacy right at the door. Talk to me about that relationship, because you do talk about, you talk about it's easy. You talk about, you have more time to talk about medicine and prescriptions. Give me a little bit more on that.
So think of it like your local barbershop, right? You're going to your barbershop to get your hair cut. You're talking about the recent Floyd Mayweather boxing match, and there's a sense of community there. There's a sense of belonging there. And that's not a feeling that you'll get when you walk into a chain pharmacy. That's not a feeling that you'll get when you walk into one of these big box stores. So when I say that it's accessible to the community, that's what I mean. I mean, the community, and not only is it accessible to the community, but the community feels comfortable. The community has a level of trust with that licensed professional who's been serving that community for generations. So many times when we're servicing our patients and having these conversations with our audience, they're generational. Their family has been coming to us for decades. And so it's the grandmother, then the mother, then the son, and now the son's kids are coming to the pharmacy. And you have that feeling of belonging. It's kind of like the TV show back in the days, Cheers, where you walk in and everyone knows your name, right? So that feeling is priceless. And that's the feeling you get when you walk into a community pharmacy.
Yeah. And when you talk about the feeling, I mean, obviously there's some great feelings that people have by having access. And I think the key word today is really access to healthcare, access to prescriptions, access to getting the help that they actually need to help them through their medical challenges. But if a community pharmacy is not present and you're not there, how big a gap is that for a community?
Well, let's hit pause there for a moment. If everything we discussed and all the value that an independent community pharmacy brings to the table, brings to the patient, brings to the community they serve, you eliminate that and take that beacon out, what do you have left? You have a very large void, leaving patients to find other locations to get medication filled and have to travel distance to get advice that they were previously able to get just by walking down the street. So when you take that pharmacy out of the picture, you eliminate the ease of access to healthcare. You eliminate the ease of access to sound, professional, licensed advice on medications, on how you're feeling, on what your symptoms are. You lose access to information. You lose access to the level of service that a community pharmacy brings to the community that they serve.
Before we go, I want to have you an opportunity to share a little bit about your pharmacy so people can know exactly where you are and where you're located.
Sure. So we're located in the heart of Little Italy. We're on 705 East 187th Street on the corner of Beaumont Avenue. We're about 2-3 blocks down from the Bronx Zoo off of 187th and Southern Boulevard. We are a small pharmacy that also has a surgical supply store next to it. But we have a robust business that services not only the Bronx community, but also the Westchester County market as well. And we also have patients and facilities and accounts that we service throughout Queens, Manhattan, and Brooklyn as well. So we're here 7 days a week. We're open late. We are in the business to service our patients, serve our community, and provide the best healthcare outcomes that we can to our patients.
Little Italy, one of my favorite places in the borough of the Bronx. All right, Javier, thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums. We appreciate the insight that you provided towards community pharmacies, and hopefully we can do our best to continue to preserve yours as well as others who have provided a much needed service. And again, thank you guys for being essential workers and really rising to the challenge in the midst of our COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the platform. Greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right. Want you to stay with us because guess what? We've got more on the Social Justice Forums. Don't go anywhere. We'll return right after this.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's gonna go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet,
The DSC builds power amongst parents, youth, and organizers, as well as advocates and educators to transform their own communities, support alternatives to a culture of zero tolerance, punishment, criminalization, and the dismantling of public schools and fighting racism and all forms of oppression. They bring together members through direct action, organizing public policy advocacy, and leadership development to fight for the human right of every young person to a quality education to be treated with dignity. Joining me now and sharing more details on this matter, I am joined by youth leader at Sistas and Brothas United and board member at Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, Jade Entien. And then also we've got parent leader and equity and education advocate with Parent Action Committee, Rasheedah Harris. And ladies, thank you for joining us here on the Social Justice Forum. I guess I'll start first with you. And Jade, if you could take it away a little bit about this, because some of the work that you're doing is really aimed at reducing the school to prison pipeline. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Jade. And the school to prison pipeline is the ideal that students of color, as soon as they step foot through school, as soon as they go through that very first scanning machine, they are put on course to be arrested, to be sent to prison, and the rest of their lives as a Black person, as a person of color, is just to go to jail. The way teachers treat students, the way they criminalize students, the way they penalize students, is just another form of them, getting students on track to go to jail, preparing them for what a prison experience is like.
And so, Rasheedah, talk to us about parents. I mean, you're very active in educating parents and letting them know about this school to prison pipeline, the work that you do connected to this.
Yes, Daren, that was awesome, Jade. Yeah, actually, we just want to continue to remind our parents and our community members that this is not what school is about, right? Our school should be safe spaces. And when we start to treat our students, when we start to criminalize them at such an early age and subject them to treatment at such an early age, they grow to be accustomed to this treatment. They accept it. They believe that this is what they deserve, and this is what their life will be like. And we know that it doesn't have to be that way. So we continue to empower parents and community members to work with students and school staff to understand that we have to change, and we have to start early and young in our schools to encourage our students, to teach them, and to build them up and not break them down.
Yeah. As a parent educator, give me a little bit about this, Rasheedah. When we talk about police in schools, right? It's been a long debated, issue about having police in schools. From your perspective, how do you view police in schools?
So we want to always differentiate police in schools and policing our children in schools. We have this false narrative that the school safety agents or the police in the schools keep our children safe and keep our schools safe. And that's just not the case. We need everyone in the school to support each other with respect and dignity. And the best of the school safety agents are the ones who do that, are the ones who see the humanity in our children and take the time to talk to them and get to know them and understand them and create this safe space or this relationship with our children. And those are who we love, right? But that's what we need overall, system-wide. We don't need a couple of good school safety agents. We need to completely dismantle the system and rebuild it in a way where we're offering these services and have staff on the premises who are loving our students, who are encouraging them and keeping them safe physically and mentally. The actual police in schools do not do that. And for folks who believe that we need it for our schools to be safe, just aren't sure of the statistics and quite honestly aren't talking to the children. There's a lot of adults, we think we know and we think we understand how it should be. And the students are telling us exactly what they're experiencing, what they're going through, how they feel, how they're being treated, and what they want and what they need. And that's who we need to listen to.
Yeah. Jade, give me an insider perspective from you. I mean, as a student, what are you hearing and what are you seeing as a student when it comes to police in schools that you would want us to know about?
Definitely the fact that police in schools are the same things as police on the outsides. Sure, they have a fancy title, school safety agents, but in reality, the way they treat students is the same way they would treat someone outside. Sure, they would be like, oh, hey, how are you, right? But then again, these are people who are trained to tackle students. They are trained to pin students to the wall and put them in handcuffs. They aren't trained to sit down and talk about issues. They're not there to resolve problems. If they were there to resolve problems, that would be, arresting a student. And what I believe a lot of schools need are more guidance counselors, school therapists, social workers, people who are actually trained to talk to students and get inside the mind of a student and understand where a student is coming from. Having these having these resources available, having these people available could greatly reduce the amount of arrests and greatly reduce the amount of in-school issues that go on in most schools. And as a student, I believe that, yeah, mental health is very important because a lot of children are going through a lot of things, and that may lead to them doing other things that may cause harm to themselves or other people. But we can stop this if we have people there who will talk to students, people who are there to understand that students are not always okay and that they are stressed and that they need mental health support. So yeah, a lot of police have been, targeting young people of color. If I may share some statistics real quick. In 2020 and 2019, the Bronx had 26.9% of arrests and 0.4% of summons. And a lot of those students were Black girls and Latinx girls. Like, we need to like take care of our young people while they're in school. And as a young person, I can definitely say in school, I feel a lot better if we had more guidance counselors rather than police who are just there to like stare you down or keep a hawk eye on you all the time.
I want to talk to Rasheedah again, and I'm going to ask you a little about, dealing, because having those police officers, there's an emotional component there. There's a psychological component there. And, I know part of the work that you do is also providing, not just in the case of police officers being in school, but just overall support for kids, for families who need that emotional support. Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually come to you from, PAC is a coalition, and another organization that we work with is the Bronx Healing Center Schools Working Group. And the Healing Center Schools Working Group came together recognizing the needs of really just approaching the schools in a healing center, with a healing centered approach. Pulling together the staff, the parents, the students, the community members, and really getting trained on trauma-informed and trauma-responsive care. The importance of that, why I'm mentioning it, is because it can never just come from one avenue. We definitely need more school counselors, more school social workers, and restorative justice practice coaches in our schools. But we also need to address the trauma that the staff is experiencing, the parents, and assisting with that support along the lines that we can recognize, and we can start to get tools to deal with, so we can assist our students. And that's where we need to focus. We need to focus on, our children cannot learn, or they cannot focus if they are dealing with trauma, childhood trauma. And quite frankly, a lot of our schools cause a little more trauma and cause a little more harm than none. And so we have to stop that. We cannot allow that to continue. They're already dealing with trauma, and then they come to school and they're re-traumatized.
Right. Is the trauma underrated? I'll ask between yourself and Jade. Is the trauma underrated from the perspective that many people don't really recognize how many of our school children are currently going to school on a day-to-day basis with trauma in their heart and their mind?
Yes, go Jade.
My mistake, my apologies. Most definitely, yes. A lot of students may have issues that go on at home. They may have issues with other students, or they may have issues with society and the world in general, right? Like, a lot of things are going on, especially during times of COVID. But before times of COVID, there were a lot of issues in the world prior. I would also like to quickly bring up that school is like where students spend most of their time. Other than at home, school is like a place where students spend most of their time, majority of their days, hanging out with friends, learning, sometimes they don't have food at home and they have to go to school for a meal, It's sad. It's really sad and upsetting that a lot of students have to. And I know a lot of students don't go to school just to be treated like a criminal. And a lot of students don't have people to talk to, like they don't trust their parents, or they don't trust, school officials, because they're afraid of what might happen to them. And what they really need is someone to, go downstairs. Well, my school therapist is downstairs. They need someone to go talk to. Maybe if they're next door, if schools had therapists and social workers and people who were just there to talk to students, a lot of students will feel like life is a bit easier, because adulthood is just a bunch of hardships. And there's a lot of things that will go on in the future. But for now, students are still young, and they still deserve to be treated, as children, no, not as children, but as youths, as people who have a bright future ahead of them. If that future is behind bars, that's not a future that I would want to see for other students of color.
Rasheedah, dealing with COVID-19, a lot of us are still trying to navigate. What's it been like for you on the parent scope, trying to navigate with this, school and virtual classrooms and all that? Talk to us about that and what it's been like for you.
Yeah, not easy at all. We chose to stay 100% remote. So my daughter is just in front of the computer learning, and I am right there beside her, acting as her paraprofessional, just helping her every step of the way because she's struggling and it's not easy. And then as a parent leader, just talking to other parents and trying to offer that support and trying to help them navigate the system is just, it's very difficult. It is, some schools are doing better than others, but we really are struggling. Our communities are struggling, and we need to get away from this narrative of learning loss, because right now, as Jade stated, as you just stated, with this pandemic, we need to ensure that we are okay mentally and physically. And that is the focus. That should be the focus of the DOE. That is the focus of us as parent leaders and advocates, to really fight for our schools, to truly take a step back and pull our students back in with love and grace and just patience, right? It can't be a quickie SEL. I'm not going to do a 5-minute check-in and then, okay, back to work. We really need to take the time to allow the space for folks to share. And we got to destigmatize therapy, right? You say, right. Oh, she needs therapy. She's, something's wrong, or this kid is acting this way. And it's like, we all need this space. We all need to learn how to talk. We all need to learn how to reflect. And this is just something that we need overall. And so the quicker we create these spaces and make it normal for everyone to be able to talk and share, reflect, and support each other, the better we'll be on a better road. And that's where we need our money and our resources to go to when we think about reopening, like fully reopening in the fall, if that's what we're gonna do.
Well, Rasheedah, Jade, I want to thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums. Appreciate the conversation. Jade, you did wonderful. Rasheedah, you did wonderful too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daren. We appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
All right, we got to have you back sometime. All right, well, listen, everybody, want to let you know that we are at the conclusion of the Social Justice Forums. We want you to know that we've elevated the conversation today, talking a little bit about injustices, biases, stereotypes. That's what Social Justice Forum is about. Brings you more information, gives you multiple points of views, and then it also promotes civic engagement. How can I get involved? And the word on the street is, we need everyone involved. So find a way to get involved, find a way to be connected, and ultimately, you'll be doing yourself and others some justice. I'm Daren Jaime saying take care. Thank you for watching the Social Justice Forums. We'll catch you next week with another level of elevated conversation. Take care.